It is a remarkable improvement.
Okay.
And that in itself allows for the cost of living to be driven up, because then at least the items that we import, or those things that are manufactured with foreign input, do not escalate beyond reasonable limits, as we saw under the MPP. So on the economic front, I think we have achieved the objective of turning around.
The indicators sound very nice, but the question is, what did you deliberately do over the past 1 year to have resulted in this? I've heard members of the MPP say the foundation they laid is what you are benefiting from. They talk about gold for oil, for instance, and all.
Umaru, I don't know which foundation that was laid would account for what we are doing. First of all, what foundation did they lay? So you need to look at where we were when we were in power. After all the cries about, or the hoopla, the hue and cry about gold for oil, the price at the pump was higher than what we have today.
Yeah, but they were starting. They were not
starting. What? They had been in power for 8 years.
They introduced
it
at last
Umaru,
minute.
They had been in power for 8 years.
Yes.
At least we had heard about gold for oil for about 2 years before they left power. But what was the outcome? The outcome was that when we went to the pump, at a point, diesel was selling at 23 cedis at the pump, and petrol was around 19 cedis or so. That is the results that the MPP achieved. By the time we came to power, it was between 14 to 15 cedis a gallon at the pump. And later, I beg your pardon, at the pump. Now, that is not the situation. The cedi, there is talk about some gold accumulation that Baumia is supposed to have initiated. There's the very same person who says he knew nothing about MPP economic management, says that he was responsible for the gold accumulation policy. Again, the contradiction there perhaps contributed to the huge defeat.
But so the question
but I was coming to the point.
What did NDC
so I'm coming.
do?
The point is that, first of all, the key factor that underlines economic development or economic performance is fiscal discipline. Our history shows that fiscal indiscipline has led to cyclical economic crisis. By 2021, it had become clear that there was a huge hole in our finances. The MPP had achieved a budget deficit of in excess of 15% at the end of 2020, which had created a huge hole, which then led to the accumulation of more debts, which led to debt unsustainability, which led to debt defaults, which then impacted our currency and led to hardships. So to make progress, you needed to reverse these things. So the first thing you look at is discipline, staying within your means. How do you do that? So you have revenue, which you match against expenditure. You are allowed a certain percentage by which you overspend. And when you set that target, you must keep within it. The MPP programmed that we were going to do what we call a primary balance. In other words, if you look at our revenue and expenditure, and you took out the fact that we had to service our debts, they said we were going to achieve a surplus of 0.5%. When they left office, it went around 3.5% or so. They did not meet that target. We set a target of 1.5% surplus. When the finance minister read his budget a month or so ago, it emerged that we had actually achieved 1.6%. We had done better than we projected. Same can be said for the budget deficit, which is a straightforward calculation
but they said that
of
you are not,
the difference between your revenue
you are not spending,
and your expenditure.
You are not spending at all.
It is not true.
That is why we are seeing the point. And that the day you start spending,
it is not true.
We're going to go down.
We are spending, but we are being fiscally prudent. When you read the budget again, the finance minister indicated that he had some shortfall in revenue, but he had corresponding cuts in expenditure. So he kept within the limits that he has set for himself. Under the MPP, when there was a drop in revenue, they ballooned expenditure. So the whole increase. Now, to curb that, you need to pinch yourself and stay within budgetary limits and spend in the areas that matter. Okay. It is not true that we are not. So let me show you that why I say we are spending. So what are the key points of expenditure in Ghana? What are the key items that government spends money on?
Construction, salaries.
I beg your pardon. The big one is salaries. In fact, if you look into the budget of 2026, as presented by the budget finance minister, 90.5 billion Ghana cedis will be spent on public sector salaries. If you look at the budget that he read in 2025 and its implementation, look at the allocations made to education, allocations made to the District Assembly's Common Fund, allocations made to the NHIS. You speak to NHIS people, they will tell you that for the first time they have money sitting in their accounts But it is rather the health service providers who are lagging behind in terms of the presentation of claims for payment to be made. In the past, we had a situation where they had capped the NHIS, and even the little that was due was not being released. So if you speak to Dr. Bampo, he will tell you that he has money in his accounts waiting for service providers to come and claim. If you go to the Legislative Assembly's Common Fund, and I always say this because I have practical knowledge of it, I'm an official member of the AAK Legislative Assembly. So I know that last year, 2024, the total amount of money that came by way of Common Fund was 298,000 Ghana cedis. This year, by the second quarter, the same assembly had received from this government 6.5 million Ghana cedis. So because of that, they are able to do projects, at least 8 of them. Okay. Now we are well on course.
Where are you cutting the expenditure from? Is it political? Okay, so the political appointees, for instance, how have you cut the expenditure?
First of all, the part of the budget that you cut, if you have to, is what we call discretionary spending. There is some expenditure that you are forced to do.
Yes.
That's almost statutory. But there's what we call goods and services, which essentially is what government institutions and agencies run on. But it is discretionary. You can decide that this year ISD will be given this amount of money to run the office and manage the place. But you will cut out some items because it is not absolutely vital. What is absolutely vital is the wages.
But you frustrate them if the goods and services are not coming.
No, that is not the case. That is not the case. Indeed, there have been increases in the goods and services allocation and disbursement of ISD as I speak to you. But the point I'm making,
what I mean is
if you let me land,
okay, specifically, what did you say?
So if you let me land, so if you check the goods and services budget as presented by the finance minister, he has spent less than he said he would. In the past, we spent more than we budgeted for. And then there is capital expenditure, which essentially drives procurement. So that there too, we restricted it to essential items, things that matter, education, health. So you go to education, for instance. The biggest expenditure item there is free SHS. Before this government came to power, on a daily basis on your news and current affairs program, you had people lamenting, headmasters complaining, parents complaining, students complaining about non-release of funds for feeding, for instance. Every now and then we hear about schools closing down because monies have not been released for feeding. Since we came to power, have you heard these noises? No, because between the beginning of this year and now, close to 1.5 billion Ghana cedis has been released to feed school children. In addition to that, other expenditure related to FSHS have been met, and because of that, you are not hearing the noises. I've just given you the situation with NHI. When was the last time you heard of service providers complaining about releases under NHIS? When you go to the common fund, the assemblies are receiving this, but there are assemblies that have received up to 13 million Ghana cedis this year. When last year they received under 1 million Ghana cedis. And when you go around, you see projects coming up, because that essentially is what the common fund is supposed to do. Okay. So money is being spent, that's why it is being spent in the right places. But if you are talking about general procurement, where things that we can do without are forced on the government payroll, on the government expenditure, and balloons it to the point where we run deficits and we have huge arrears that we have to. Let me give you one final example. For instance, go to the energy sector. Before we came into power, the situation at ECG was dire. In 2024, they had programmed to spend just around 900 million Ghana cedis on procurement. By the time the year went to an end, they had spent over 7 billion Ghana cedis, or committed ECG to expenditure of over 7 billion Ghana cedis. Indeed, they had imported cables that they would not need for the next 15 years.
So you're preventing that? Okay.
Now, that has been brought under control.
Okay.
And so you see that when ECG gets money, they are able to honor the cash waterfall mechanism. And all players in the sector are getting something. So the secret has been fiscal discipline, staying within budgetary limits and ensuring that the monies that are being disbursed go to the areas where they are needed the most, in the social sector, education, health, and what have you.
This is face-to-face on Channel One television. Staying disciplined is what he has said, is the reason we are seeing what we're seeing. But explain how you're going to build a road, a brand new road from Accra to Kumasi, and how is that going to affect the budget and also expenditure generally when you already have a road that you have not completed. I'll ask that when we come back. Plus, we'll talk about governance itself, how they have fared. Please stay with us.